The Great Depression was the worst economic crash of all time. It began in 1929 and ended in 1939 for a total of 10 years. So how did it start? What was so depressing about it? And how was it solved? Well, all of those will be answered here, today. So to understand the Great Depression, you must first understand America before the crash. In the States, the 1920s were commonly referred to as the Roaring Twenties. It was a time of great economic booms and also a lot of social shifts. It's also sometimes referred to as the Jazz era, since jazz became one of the nation's favorite types of music. It wasn't only jazz, though, because all sorts of popular culture changed. Films, fashion, radio, you name it. Now this is in part because the world had just emerged from the First World War and had recently recovered from the Spanish flu, both of which were not the best for pop culture, to say the least. During this time, many Americans were spending lots of money on things such as entertainment and funded it through their high earnings, but that still wasn't quite enough to fund for their extravagant lifestyles. Many Americans bought stock and used that to fund their lifestyles. That meant that by the time the stock market crashed, more people than usual would be affected. So the stock market crashed on October 28th, otherwise known as Black Monday. Stock prices fell by about 13%. The next day, the stocks fell by another 12%, as a record 16 million shares were traded. A few months later, banks started to fail with 650 failures. Banks failing caused a reduced money supply as there was less credit available. That meant that each dollar was worth more, so prices fell. That reduced revenue for businesses. This also meant that debt cost more for lenders to pay back. This resulted in many personal and business bankruptcies. As businesses failed, it also caused more and more people to be out of jobs and unemployment rose. Then President of the U.S., Herbert Hoover, signed the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act. It raised tariffs on 900 imports. It was implemented to try and help protect farmers, but it ended up starting a trade war that caused international trade to collapse, making the Great Depression go truly global. Then, to make things even worse, a drought hit the United States that would later be called the Dust Bowl drought, and the worst drought in over 300 years. This meant that farmers would not have enough to feed themselves since their crops failed. As more and more banks failed, more and more people rushed to withdraw their savings. These bank runs caused more and more bank failures. As banks only kept about 10% of the deposits, so only 10% of people could withdraw their savings, which caused even more bankruptcies. Hoover continued to try to stop the crisis. However, nothing helped, and the Depression reached a new low for people. While historians debate what effect Hoover had on the Depression and if it was good or bad, it can easily be said that the person who came next did much more to help the crisis. And the next president was Franklin Delano Roosevelt, or FDR. He's very well known for his New Deal, which was meant to help end the Depression. He closed banks to avoid any more failures. FDR created and passed many different acts that helped people in need and created new jobs. The government was required to pay for these acts themselves, and so the U.S. national debt began to rise. The drought also continued to worsen. Now, there were a lot of acts and complicated financial things that were done by the government to try and solve the Depression, and they are quite interesting. However, they are very complicated, and there are just so many, so I'm not going to talk about them in this video. But if you'd like to know, just check out the links in the description. What ended up ending the Great Depression was the Second World War. As the European powers fought, the U.S. started to make weapons and vehicles for the Allies to use. This meant that the unemployment rates plummeted, and when the U.S. joined the war, it allowed for even more people to find employment as men became soldiers and the women were able to join the factory jobs. By the end of the war, the Great Depression was essentially over. Thank you for watching this video. Sorry it's been a while, I've been kind of busy. If you enjoyed, then consider liking the video and subscribe if you would like to see more videos of mine. Also, check out some of the other videos you see on the screen right now, if you'd like to. Thank you for watching and have a good day.